Okay, so Glen Sikura, welcome to the platform. Thanks for being here. It's an honor just to have you on. I got to name off all these list of titles that I've seen your name attached to. You tell me about these here. Ex-Chief Steward of the Jockeys Club of Canada, past president of the National and Ontario Canadian Thoroughbred Society, founding member of the Canadian Horse Racing Association, Hall of Famer in the Canadian Hall of Fame for Horse Racing, former director of the Breeders' Cup and founding member of the Owners and Breeders Association. Are those all legit?
They're legit. I hope I did some good along the way with those various organizations. Some require more work than others. Some are more fun than others. And well, that's my phone going off, and I'm going to turn that off. And it's been my honor to be a representative for the horse business and contribute any which way I can to keep what I think is a remarkable way of life and a remarkable business and pastime going.
Before I get into all those titles, I want to ask you one simple question. How did you get involved with the horses and horse racing?
That was very simple. My dad was involved, and he didn't have two pennies to rub together when he first came here, but he just had a passion for horses. And as he worked his way up the ladder, an immigrant from Bratislava, he got a little bit of money together and couldn't wait. He moved out to a farm and built a farm. So my brother, sister, and I were raised on the farm. And he was a big dreamer, and he was a guy that knew how to be a deal maker. He always found somebody who would buy into his dream and help him along the way. So he had a lot of partners, and he did some wonderful things.
Wow, man. I read a little bit about your dad and how you took over the business afterwards and so forth. But I want to ask you so much questions about that. But before we get into that, I'll jump right back to your titles. Being a steward of the Jockeys Club of Canada, what's involved there, man? I know you're no longer part of that, but what's involved there?
So I'm involved for a little while still. The Jockey Club of Canada is a group of owners, breeders, trainers, racetrack executives, et cetera, et cetera. So there you are asked to become a member, and then from the members, they have a board of stewards, and I think there's 11 stewards, and then from those 11 stewards, they hire they vote on and select a chief steward. So the chief steward essentially is, I guess you'd call president in a different association, but in this case, they're called the chief steward. So I had my 2 terms, and I've been term limited. I sit on the board of stewards for 1 more year as the past chief steward, and then I will still remain a Jockey Club of Canada member, but I'll have to sit out for a few more years before I would be, assuming they wanted me, before I would be allowed to be back as a steward.
Oh, wow, man. Now, being part of all those, I guess, organizations, have those duties, is it fun, or is it something you just feel like a mission, like something you're called to do?
Well, I'm going to say that it's all of what you've suggested and more. So my first, when I was quite young, I got involved with the Canadian Thoroughbred Horse Society, and I ran for office, I think, when I was 29 years old, which is 36 or more years ago. I'm 65 now, so do the math. Or actually, maybe I was even younger than that. But I did it really to meet more people, meet people within the business, and you go in there, very altruistic. And sometimes you find out that it's a tough nut to crack. Sometimes you find out that, hey, some people aren't in it for all of the same reasons that you are. Sometimes you knock heads with people, and that's unfortunate because you and I could be great pals, and then when it comes talking horse politics, maybe we don't agree with that. So it's not all fun. It's certainly not fun when you disagree with somebody and you have to take a stand against their opinion, or vice versa. But for the most part, if you're doing good and you think you're progressing or you're playing a role within any of those associations, I wouldn't change it for the world. So I loved most of my time with the CTHS, which is where I spent most of my time. The Jockey Club of Canada is a different association. It was still hands-on, but we didn't have to deal with things like the slot cancellation within the Jockey Club of Canada. That was something dealt with another association, and that was one of the more miserable times of my business life. So it's all of the above. It's fun, it's rewarding, it's challenging, and there's times when you go home and pull what little hair I have out of my head and say, why am I doing this? But if the product is, or the end product is, that we have a better racing program because of the involvement of various volunteers, then it's well worth it.
Well, I mean, as the from the member of the Canadian Horse Racing Association, does that cover the entire Canada, or does that only cover a part of Canada?
So that would probably have been what we called it back in the day, ORIA, Ontario Horse Racing Industry Association. So we formed that group, and it was a very, very effective and really one of the first of its kind in North America industry association. Only provincially, so Ontario-wide, but Alberta got their own organization going, and other jurisdictions outside of the country got their own industry associations going, and it worked very well for a period of time. Now there's been several different iterations of it. It's now essentially Ontario Racing. As different political parties get involved, they want to make their own input, and sometimes egos get a little bit larger than they need to be. So some people think that their role ought to be higher than it was previously, and everybody likes to put a spin on it. But the idea of having one voice, one industry association that would speak for all within the horse racing business is immensely important, and sometimes it's lost upon us. When you knock on government's door, there's nothing better for them than finding out that you have a different opinion than the other person in the horse business that's beside you, because they don't have to deal with you at that point. But if you go as a unified force and you say, we, the horse people that represent gosh knows how many tens of thousands of people within the province, we're united and we have the following opinion, you're going to get a much better audience. But it used to be every association would go knocking on their own, and the people that owned thoroughbred racehorses would have one opinion. The people that bred thoroughbred racehorses had a different opinion. The people that bred standardbreds were it's just too much. So if you can go with a united voice and say, here's what we're looking for, here's what we need to survive, I think you have a much better audience.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because right now the current state of horse racing, and everywhere I go, people are telling me how the province here in Ontario, they slashed the funding and so forth, and I just wonder if that's ever going to come back. I know we have our premier now who seems to be a big fan of the industry, and I'm not sure if he's on board or not. Maybe you can share a little bit more. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know a little bit. I know Woodbine Racetrack is in his riding, so it's certainly to his benefit to be supportive of the horse racing industry. But, politicians are supposed to be representing the people, and I think I'm a fan of Premier Ford's. I think he does a reasonably good job of that. We were villainized previously by the McGuinty government when they got themselves in trouble by spending too much money, and they took a run at the horse industry, villainizing the horse industry and doing everything they could to claw back as much money as humanly possible from the slot machines. And I know this is old news to anybody who's heard this story before, but slot machines are at racetracks for a reason. We have a legal ability to contain gambling. We have social acceptance of gambling at a racetrack. We have customers, we have parking, we have the facility. So there's really no reason why it's not a perfect fit, other than the previous government, a couple governments back, felt like, we didn't probably anticipate the slots at racetracks being such a success, and they canceled the slots program, and we fought tooth and nail. And when you asked me earlier, is it always fun? We were fighting for our lives. We were literally fighting for our lives when they canceled the slot program. They came onto our facilities, put slot machines in there. We got what I think was a fairly meager amount, which was 10% to the horsemen, 10% to the racetracks. The government got 80%, and 80% wasn't enough, in spite of the fact that it was our facilities, our customers. They didn't have to, go to war with the neighborhood who said, hey, I don't want a slot parlor in my neighborhood, or I don't want a slot machine at the local 7-Eleven store. So I think we offered all of the great reasons, and we offered a great deal of money to the provincial government, and they canceled us. They tried to villainize us, and found out that, it was bad politics on their part, and we tried to piece this back together. So will we ever be back to where we were? The slot deal doesn't currently allow that, and I think we always, well, I can only speak for myself. I feel a little bit of like a hostage to the program. We were previously government partners, and they tried to paint us as a subsidy, and now they've really taken that partnership away, and now we are at the whim of the provincial government as to the amount of funding that we receive. So I wish it had gone back. I wish we were a true partnership like we once were. The other thing to note about government is they're not only our regulators, but they're our biggest competitors. With all the sports lotteries and the various gambling tickets. And we were promised at the time, when we kissed and made up, we were promised to be part of what they called integration, which we thought that meant there'd be other gaming products and things like this that could benefit the horse racing industry, that would have a tie somehow to the horse racing industry, and we would get a percentage of that. And that hasn't happened. So I feel relatively safe with Premier Ford in charge, but I don't know what the next 10 and 20 and 30 years holds. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you can't go by the skin of your teeth. You need to be able to plan. You need to know that that horse racing is important to all of the people in charge.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Based on in the last couple of years, 2-3 years, for me especially, I've found a little bit of renewal with the sport or business. I like following around the jockeys. I'm trying my best to promote as much as I can the people that's involved. For me, it started way back with a cousin who was a groom, and just seeing him get up early in the morning, leaving the house, never see him again until nighttime, and now he's an older person, it just kind of, this is me just kind of paying my respect to what he was doing all those years. But, for the men and women out there right now, I just wonder if they have the same kind of energy too as well, because, as we grow and we get older, sometimes it gets a little bit harder. I want to ask you, Glenn, about the Breeders' Cup and being a founding member.
No, not of the Breeders' Cup, but I can tell you a very interesting story. My dad and John Gaines were very good friends, and Mr. Gaines was the one who developed the concept of the Breeders' Cup. And I got to sit a casual lunch when Mr. Gaines was telling my father about this idea that he had, which then became the Breeders' Cup. So I feel very sentimental whenever a Breeders' Cup gets mentioned, just for that. It's like being a kid in the back room when they were drawing up the Constitution, and you got to listen in on the conversation. So it was an amazing experience for me. And a guy like Mr. Gaines is absolutely one in a million. He was one of the great minds of all time, and I always use a quote that he has, because we were somewhere and Mr. Gaines was asked, because he was a farmer, but quite a brilliant businessman, not just a farmer, and somebody asked him if he owned a farm, and he said, "Well, I thought I owned a farm." He said, "But I found out the farm owns me." Think of that often as well. Every time it's 3 a.m. and there's a mare foaling or there's a pipe that's broken or something, you say, "Well, who's running the show here?" It's the farm that runs the show.
As I thought that was pretty funny. I'm relatively true. I just want to be sure, because they say you're the owner of Hillandale Thornberry horses. Is that confirmed? Is that true, Glenn?
That's absolutely true. Not to be confused with my brother, who owns and operates on his own. I say this. I think this is I don't know if I invented this expression. I say we work interdependently. We're not completely. Well, he's mostly independent of me, but we own some mares together, and certainly my best mares are in most cases owned in partnership with him. But he's done brilliantly for himself. We had a peaceful, I won't call it a split necessarily, but it just, from a logical standpoint, when the business was going with myself, my brother, and my father, we were doing it all together. But my brother's been down in Kentucky now for 30 or 40 years, and I'm not prepared to move to Kentucky, and would obviously not be a fair scenario for me to be involved as his partner, and everything I have pertains to the horse business. So it's not like I'm independently wealthy and I can be an absentee landlord or anything like that. So yes, I own Hillandale Canada. My brother owns, they've now named it Hillandale at Alapa. So it was always Hillandale Farms, but he bought a wonderful old farm. Actually, the farm that they shot the movie Seabiscuit on. Wow. It's called Alapa Farm. So now he's Hillandale at Alapa. And, we are separate and apart, and sometimes people confuse me for being more rich and more powerful because, the association with my brother. But no, that's not my farm. I pay bills when I have a mare that goes to his farm. I pay the same as you would. So we operate interdependently.
Oh, wow. There's a long history, I guess, with you and your brother and, your father, that's a lot of history once you put it together, and a lot of winners. And, there's so much when you think of Hillandale. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, even now, like there's so much. It's the name that just stands out, right? Looking back at all those, are there any thing that really stands out when it comes to your upbringing to this point? My dad was a very, very brilliant man who came over from Bratislava. He escaped in the middle of the night with his mother and father, and so didn't have a formal education. So I think more than anything, what I learned about the horse business was through him. And he wasn't a teacher per se. You just would watch him and keep up, or you get left behind. But he never sat me down and said, "This is how you do the following." So I got to watch him build the farm. I got to watch him go through a lot of sweat, a lot of pain, and certainly some triumphs. But in the horse business, if you're winning at 20% of the time, you're outdoing most other people. Which, if you look at it on the flip side, that means you're losing 80% of the time. So right. You better have a thick skin. I remember very specific things that happened, horses that were near and dear to me, or horses that meant a great deal to me that, were maybe something that I put together with my brother and father. They're probably more important to me than anything I would have done on my own. There was a day at the races when we won both splits of the Nassau stake in the old days when they used to split stakes because there were too many horses. And that was just a great day of racing. Winning
two ends of the same stake race, and competing with the Samson Farms and Kinghaven Farms and outfits of that stature. But we were probably always somewhat underdogs, and I feel very comfortable to say the name Hillendale will go on for decades and decades, not through me necessarily or my kids, but my brother's kids are very bright and very hardworking, and my brother doesn't silver spoon those kids. They get up in the morning and they go to the barn and they work, and the older boy is not only in university now, but he works for Todd Pletcher when Keeneland when the Keeneland meet is on, and he's done work in the horse business in Australia and California, New York, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be a Hillendale, for many years to come, and maybe my association with it will only be through my brother, but I don't think it's something that my children will follow up on. But maybe they'll own a racehorse or two, something like that. But I don't think they're going to get into the farming business.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. Also, hearing how hard your brother's kids work with the farm horses and so forth, because I've been speaking to several people of lately. We were talking about being grounded, doing some physical work, just getting the kids outside, doing outdoor stuff, get them involved. A lot of times people see persons like yourself who've done pretty well, and they figure things are just handed to you. And I guess hearing that from you, that's not necessarily true. People still have to put the work in order to get the success.
Everybody's different, but that's how my dad was, and I think I'm a product of the lifestyle that he led. And if you can imagine, growing up in a country that's been invaded a couple of times, and you've got either Russian or German soldiers marching through your town and sneaking out in the middle of the night, and you arrive without 2 nickels to rub together, without the ability to speak very good English. So, when you're 15 years old, you get to school and everybody teases you, and you can't speak the language, so you don't really further your education. And, you're working as a dishwasher, and then you work up from dishwasher to stockbroker to horse person to, having lunch with John Gaines and Nelson Bunker Hunt, and, being an honorary Kentucky colonel and things of that nature. So his story was a great success, and there's absolutely no way he would have just handed it to my brother and I in a silver platter. So we've done the same with our kids to the best of our ability. I think they've got it softer maybe than the generation before them, because of my dad's hard work and everything. We didn't have that same experience, but we got up in the mornings, and we were at the sale at 5 a.m, cleaning stalls and then changing into our clothes, and showing horses and directing people at the sale. And now you get to the point where it's my brother's birthday today, so he's 67.
This portion of the video is brought to you by Amplified Stables. Having a good team is important when you are dealing with the horses. The energy, the passion, and the consistency all come together on the track and off the track. Amplified Stables gives you the full package if you are breaking horses or boarding horses. Please check out their website to get more information on how you can reach them. Check the link below.
Sure that we worked hard, and my brother and I making sure our kids work hard. To this day, I still do, with assistance, but I still do all the foalings on the farm. So, we're getting ready for 40 or so foals this year, and the foal will be ringing at 3 a.m. to say that a mare's broken her water, and I'm still part of every single foaling that we have, if I can, and have a very able assistant in Tova, and her husband Brian helps us when need be. So.
Well, I was quite surprised when I met you at the farm, and I saw how down to earth you are. And, I thought that was pretty cool. We had a good conversation. You told me that yeah, you can be a millionaire in this business, but you have to start as a multimillionaire first. And that sent waves through my head. I started thinking. I never forgot that. So I was like, man. So what makes you continue to do this?
Part of it is stubbornness. I don't like to fail. And like I said, you're going to get your fair share of failures. But the dream is to breed a horse that wins the Plate or the Derby or the Breeders' Cup, to sell a yearling for a lot of money, to be involved in a broodmare that goes on to produce a champion or multiple champions. So I was always around athletics my entire life, and this is a bit of an extension of that on top of the business aspect of things. But it's even if you have a good year, it seems like you just put it all back into the business and try to get better for the following year. And hope springs eternal. We've got I'm involved in some really well-bred yearlings for next year. This year was not a good year, but I've got next year an Into Mischief and a Curlin that are going through the sales ring, and a couple of Nyquist that are going through the sales ring. So, you've got to be optimistic, with a little bit of realism when you don't have a steel company or something like that behind you to pay your bills. So you need to retain a level of realism for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Did you imagine all this being inducted to the Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame? Did you sit on the farm one day and say, this will happen?
Not really. I felt mostly good about myself in the work that I had the effort that I had put in. And that's really all you can control, right? You can't always control the result, but you can control the effort. And I go to bed with a clean conscience that I did the best I could do for the various associations that I represented. And I really felt in our heyday that the CTHS did some really, really good work, and I was very, very happy to be part of that. And I got to work with a lot of good board members, and I got to work with Julie Coulter as my general manager for the entire time that I was, or most of the entire time that I was there. And she and I got along very well, and we were just, in my opinion, we were able to do a lot of really good things. So I guess getting an award is an offshoot of that, but certainly not why you do it. And the truth would be, I was hopeful that it might happen someday, but I didn't stay up nights thinking about it.
Oh wow. Well, being having so many titles and being so heavily involved, you have big horses, produce big winners. Going to the farms and getting up early in the morning and watching a horse work, seeing how a horse run. What does that do for you? Does it do anything differently from 20 years ago, or is it still the same?
It's absolutely still the same, and you know what? Maybe it's a little more special now, because back then you didn't know what you didn't know, and I think you probably anticipated that you would have more success. That every time you bought a horse, you'd have a winner or potentially a stakes winner, and now you realize just how few and far between a really good horse is. And you love them all the same, but boy, oh boy, as my kids are hockey players, and when the alarm goes at 6 a.m. and you've got a hockey game, you jump right up with a smile on your face. It's no different than when you've got a horse that you really care about, that's training well, and you're hopeful for. It's a lot easier to jump out of bed if you think she's going to be a stakes winner.
Yeah, I know. I met a guy one time. He's 80-something years old, and he said, Derek, and this is going back a couple of years ago. He said, Derek, when I was younger, I used to jump on the highway and drive all the way down from Scarborough all the way to Fort Erie to watch a horse work. and that's like less than 2 minutes, and then drive right back home. I was like, man, this is something else. For the love of the game, the things that you guys do, and I have to take my hat off to each and every one of you. It's quite amazing. I want to ask you about the racetracks in Ontario. I know there's doesn't seem to be too many. There's Woodbine, there's Fort Erie, and then there's Ajax, I think, up in Ajax.
Ajax is for the quarter horse business, and there's several standardbred tracks as well.
Yeah, the standardbreds are there. Are you heavily involved with the standardbreds too as well?
Not at all. I respect other breeds, but you know what? It's hard enough to know what you know with one breed, let alone two or three. So my entire upbringing has been thoroughbreds. I have great admiration for the people that do this, whether it be a quarter horse or standardbred, owner, driver, breeder. They all go through, I'm sure, the same thing that we go through in the thoroughbred business, but this is where I was raised, so it's something I'm more accustomed to.
So I was wondering about those tracks, and lately I've heard a lot of whispers about tracks not getting along and stuff like that. Do you have thoughts on any of those things, and why racetracks won't work sort of together? Because for a fan, for most people around, we figure it will be very healthy for the industry.
When I grew up, there was 3 tracks, and they were all owned by what was in those days. It's not Woodbine Entertainment Group anymore. It used to. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on what they even called themselves. But so there was a Greenwood meet, there was a Woodbine meet, and a Fort Erie meet, and it was all owned essentially by Woodbine. And Greenwood made sense to sell for the previous management because they had some financial difficulties. Woodbine had financial difficulties, and the real estate was worth a lot of money, and they thought they could do, rather than do the meet at Greenwood, they could sell the real estate for lots of money, pay some bills, et cetera, et cetera. And, when you have the benefit of hindsight, what would 30 or 40 acres in downtown Toronto be worth today? I think they might have got $25 million for it, which at the time maybe seemed like all the money in the world, but I'm sure it would be probably a property of 10 times that at this point in time. So we lost Greenwood Racetrack, and then Fort Erie Racetrack, which was sort of our Saratoga meet in the summertime. That was sold by Woodbine, and it's subsequently changed ownership a couple of times, and now Woodbine operates independently of Fort Erie. So I think Woodbine feels like, I hate to use the word competitor, because as my brother said, if your competitor is Fort Erie Racetrack and you're Woodbine Racetrack, that's like the Toronto Maple Leafs saying a team playing minor midget is their competitor. Fort Erie is a very, very, very vital racetrack. It's a lovely spot. It's very quaint, but it is at this point in time offering racing that is not of the caliber of Woodbine Racetrack. And, for Woodbine to think that that's their competition, or they won't allow horses transport back and forth to compete at both tracks. I don't understand that. So Fort Erie has got an abundance of problems, financial issues, and my hat is off to them. It's a way of life. It's a huge part of the Fort Erie economy, the racetrack, and they're separate and apart from Woodbine in every way. But they need a capital infusion. They're doing the absolute best with what they've got. But you run horses there, and the purse money is not great. And then you get to Woodbine, and the purses are relatively very good. But it's been a tough go over the last couple of years. We see as horse people. I don't know how to say this nicely. I don't give a rat's ass about everything that's not related to horse racing at Woodbine Racetrack. It's all supposed to be about horse racing, and we've got casinos and hotels and building houses and talking about soccer fields and things like. This wasn't the concept that E.P. Taylor, who's the genius that put all of this together. Everything was meant for the horse person, and we're talking about a sales pavilion now being converted potentially or demolished and putting up a go station. The simple question that all the horsemen have to ask is, what's in it for me? And I don't mean for that to sound greedy, but this is a really difficult business. Purses have been stagnant. The mood at the racetrack is not as good as it once was. And when do we see the fruits of the labors of everybody? And this idea, trust me or just be patient, it gets a little bit old. So, as a horseman, I would like to see purses increased. I would like to see breeders' awards increased. I would like to see some incentives for people to stand stallions in the province that are of a higher caliber. I would like to see incentives to broodmare owners. There's a million and one things, and I know it sounds very simple, but it's all about the money. You need money to do so. So, again, when I go by Woodbine Racetrack and I see the development and everything, I want to know what's in it. When I say me, I don't mean just me personally. I mean, right. What's in it for everybody who owns a horse, trains a horse, gets up at 4 a.m. to walk hots and rub horses. What's in it for all of us? Because all I'm seeing is the real estate shrinking, and the only thing that really and truly holds value over years and years and years is real estate.
Well, so, that is quite true. The people, they mean so much to the racetrack. I hear, I have a group on Facebook where, a bunch of horse people get together and, just seeing them dwell together, they stay all year. And then I guess now around this time of the year, some of them take off, some have to stay on the track. It means a lot to these people. So, just to have a voice for those guys, I think is very important as well too, just to keep it going, and I think it would be nice to see Fort Erie come back too as well. Quite honestly, I've met quite a few people down at Fort Erie, and they work hard too, but like you said, the money just doesn't add up, for a lot of people.
No, I mean, I'll just give you an example. I had a filly down at Fort Erie all year. She won 2 allowance races and she was second in 2 allowance races. So that's a pretty successful season. If you were at Woodbine Racetrack, that would be a highly successful financial season. I got about $30,000. So that $30,000, I got to pay the trainer. The jockey gets 10%. The trainer gets 10%. You've got to pay your bills, et cetera, et cetera. So, I had a highly successful year with this one filly, and maybe I put $10,000 in my pocket, and it cost me $185,000 US to breed to the stallion that produced this horse. So, that you don't have to be an economist to know that's probably not that's not good math.
No, definitely not. So I think there will be something need to be done there in order for that to change and for it to turn over and have a big transformation. I really hope that someone either funds it or takes it over, or I don't know what's going to happen there, but I would love to see Fort Erie in a different state because it's so close to the border. It's a good outing for me. If I leave Toronto, driving to the States, I can stop over there, watch some races and keep going, come back, do the same thing. I would love to see it come back again. Really nice.
I think it personally should be declared a heritage site because there is enough history there. And I think they could be creative with the way they finance it. And I mean, without being crazy, I'm not suggesting that by any means. But, again, they put a casino just down the road from the racetrack. So how is Fort Erie supposed to compete with that? Fort Erie, I don't know how old Fort Erie is. Let's just say it's 75 years old. It's probably older. You're there with a facility that's 75 years old that was developed by private enterprise, and then government comes 20 miles away or 10 miles away and slaps up $100 million casino with all the amenities known to mankind. And they say, well, people aren't really interested in horse racing anymore. Well, you know what? You got air conditioning, free drinks. You've got whatever legalized gambling you decide that you would like to do, and run it against Fort Erie and horse racing. And then you say Fort Erie is not a popular venue. Well, it's only partially true. It's true, but you're not doing anything to help it. So.
Well, I think also, Glenn, you got to take in consideration just the men and women who are working with these horses, and this is what they do, and this is their life. Once that's not happening no more, what do you do with all these people? How do they transform?
It's a great point, and so I don't think you get to government with tugging at their heartstrings too often. I think you get to them with mathematics. But what you're saying is dead on. There are people there that are so hardworking, so dedicated, such wonderful human beings, and the fact that they might want to get up at 4 a.m. to work with a horse shouldn't be looked down upon by somebody who doesn't have that same passion, But what you said is right, and we tried to make this point long ago. There are so many agricultural jobs, or there's so many jobs that are very, very highly specific to the horse industry. They aren't transferable skills. I remember them interviewing a gentleman that was our farm manager at the time, and he said, "What am I supposed to do if you kill the horse business? Be a baker?" Like I'm 50, I'm 65 years old. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to retire because I presume I might have the ability to do other things, but this is all I've ever done since I'm 20 years old on a full-time basis. And so many grooms and others are, they don't have a formal education. They don't have formal training on how to do X, Y, or Z, but they're brilliant at what they do. They're dedicated at what they do. And those skills, while not transferable, are immensely valuable.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm always amazed when I listen to these guys and they talk about the numbers, and these numbers are the clocks, the horse numbers, the 21, the 45, and this and that, and they keep going and going and going. But you talk to them about something else, and they're not interested. So I'm just saying, for each and every part of any business or industry or whatever, there's always unique people who have a good full grip on it, and they're very important, equally as important to those things as bankers or someone else, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I want to ask you just briefly about this too as well. When you see, or if you ever watch racing in Japan or Australia or any places like that, and you see the amount of people who show up at the tracks, what do you think about the state of racing in Ontario? And do you ever see, a lot of people have voiced their concerns that they won't see that again, but what are your thoughts when you see so many people, 80,000 it was, I think last week or something at the Japan Cup, showing up to watch the races?
I've been to both, so I feel like I can speak to it a little bit. I've been to Japan a couple times for the Japan Cup, and I've been to Australia during the Oaks and the horse sale there. It's remarkable. I don't know how to force somebody to enjoy horse racing the way we do naturally, but I certainly think that we could do a much better job, and we need to work in unison and promote the beauty of the horse, the athleticism, the events, and I'm sure the track is doing their best that they can, but there are other resources that they need to call upon, and we need to do this as a team, because the people that are the horse people, I think, really get it, and the people that are management or just business people look at things from an entirely different light. So yes, it has to add up mathematically, but on the other hand, you know what? You need to have that love of the horse. There are promotions and things that we could do to really jumpstart the business, or hopefully get us back a little bit towards where we used to be. King's Plate Day is a huge day. This year was a massive foul up, but usually it's a huge day, and it's a day that the racetrack has put great resources into to bring younger people out, and even people that aren't necessarily horse racing people, and we need to start there, because once we convert a couple of them, and the old they tell two friends and they tell two friends, etc., and before you know it, you've got a broader base than what you started with.
I often wonder, and I usually quiz a lot of horse people. I usually start with the trainers, but I usually ask them, would we ever see a race in Canada where it could be a Canadian race where the purses are so good that this one day where horse people from BC, from Alberta, from Manitoba, Ontario would I know the level of horses are different, but maybe it would jumpstart them getting some more competitive horses too as well. Maybe a race with a purse of $2-3 million, which we have a point system where, just like the Kentucky Derby, where these people have to actually get the point system to get to this race, to get that purse. I think it would be awesome. It might be a jump start to get the younger people involved, get some media, things like that. I know it seems like a stretch, but I would love to see that here in Canada, the same way we see it down in the U.S.
I think you acknowledge the biggest problem, which is, without sounding arrogant at all, the Ontario racing product is for the most part superior to the Western Canadian racing product, and we don't have anything east of us in the thoroughbred industry. But there have been attempts made. For example, the yearling sales stakes that they have in the various provinces that are run through the various CTHS boards, horses that run in, the only horses that are allowed to run in those races are graduates of the sale. And now they have made a rules that graduates of the Alberta sale can run it in the Ontario sales stakes. Graduates of the Ontario sales stakes could run out in Alberta or BC or Manitoba. So that's a little bit of what you're referring to, but it hasn't probably gone far enough.
Yeah, for me, it's just a dream down the dream pipe. But it's something that I think could excite majority of the country. Maybe it'll get younger people to start seeing things differently. We hype up the Kentucky Derby, and Jesus, it's not only in the U.S., it's in Canada, but also worldwide now too. So people sit at the TVs and they watch this, and they make some bets. They have parties, they do all kinds of stuff, and that excites the whole industry. So it's just a stretch, but maybe something here of that sort could be a jumpstart in the future.
Well, it could start easily enough with just something as simple as having a Queen's Plate worth $2 million, or a Canadian Oaks worth $1 million or $1.5 million. Because that in terms of investment in the business, everybody in the business is a dreamer. Everybody thinks it's going to be them that wins it. It doesn't matter that it's not going to be them. That's the goal that you're shooting for. So again, I hate for it to sound so simple, but money is the driving force with this engine. So you need to have healthy purses, and when Woodbine purses exceeded purses elsewhere, then it was very simple. People would pick up stakes from New York or Pennsylvania or Kentucky or wherever and come to Woodbine to race. And Mark Cassidy still does and has tremendous success, but that doesn't really build a flourishing local industry. And I think a lot of people would argue, and I wouldn't argue with them, that you need to come up with some incentives for the people that have been here all along and have kept this business going. So you need to do something for the local horsemen.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. A lot of people would be actually very happy and excited to hear you say that, and to hear more people echo it too as well. That would be pretty awesome. Does bloodlines matter? And is bloodlines everything?
Yes, and then no. So yes, bloodlines matter, but no, they're not everything. You need an athlete. So if you've got an athlete and they have the bloodlines, that's Mike Tyson. If you've just got the bloodlines or just got the athlete, there's probably limits placed upon them. So I was raised to believe very, very strongly in bloodlines, but the second you move away from the physicality of the animal, you're going to make a mistake. So whether you're selling or whether you're keeping and racing, you need an athlete. So you need to breed for athleticism. You need to, if you get a 14 two hands mare with offset knees, who's got a magnificent pedigree, she might throw you a good horse, but that's probably not a real good recipe. And, you get a horse with absolutely zero pedigree that happened to be a freak of nature and $1.5 million on the racetrack. She might not be a great producer either. So, my theory in buying any mare is I itemize things that are important to me: race record, pedigree, broodmare sire, physicality, covering stallion, and whatever amount of money I have, I buy as much of that as humanly possible without, and you live and learn. You go a certain direction thinking that it'll work, and it doesn't work, and then you say, oh, maybe I just didn't have enough broodmare sire power in this pedigree, so I need to find a mare by Medaglia d'Oro or Curlin or Distorted Humor, Bernardini, or something like that, rather than buy something less descript.
Yeah, quite interesting. I always felt like the mares played a big role. I mean, the mares, quite honestly, all of my favorite horses in this last little while has been mares. Quite honestly, they outshine the boys for me personally. So for me, I don't know. I was doing the math the other day. I was like, who are my favorite horses? I started thinking about Tapin, Jambalaya. I started thinking about not Jambalaya, Zenyatta. I started thinking about those horses, and I was like, I said Jambalaya because I knew the connection with Jambalaya, and that's why I said it. But those are my favorite horses: Tapin and Zenyatta, two favorite in the last little while. I think maybe there's going to be a newbie coming up shortly, but those horses being really, really nice to watch on the racetrack. Who have been your favorite?
Well, I would agree with you that those great colts, they're one in a million. But when you get one of them, it's super to watch them. Justifier, American Pharaoh, who can win a triple crown. Those are brilliant animals. But they generally don't race at 4 or 5. So I think you can fall in love with a filly or mare a lot more, because they're probably going to run at 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old before retiring. And Moira was certainly a lot of fun to watch this year. But the ones that were my favorite wouldn't necessarily have been the best racehorses. We had a mare called Strong and Steady, and she was one of my favorites because, just my association with her and my father and brother, and being with that. And then we had a mare called Dejin, and part of it is their success on the racetrack, but part of it was, what role did I have in creating her, or what was my role in things. And so those two would be two of my favorites. And my pals and I had a horse called Corsi, who's now standing in the islands as a stallion, but he was 2 for 2, and we had so much fun together in the little bit of time that we had with him. And he got finished galloping out, and a horse that was acting like a rogue ran into him at full speed while he was standing still on the racetrack, and injured his shoulder quite severely. We never got him back to the track, and I just, to the day I die, I will always wonder how good he might have been. I think he was going to be a legitimate Queen's Plate horse with me and 2 pals that I've put in a lot of time and effort with. So I would have, I would call him a favorite as well. But I guess overall, probably Strong and Steady would be my favorite.
Oh wow! I now that you mentioned Corsi, I didn't realize that you had bred Corsi. I'm actually friends with the person. I'm not sure if he still owns Corsi down in Barbados, but I'm friends with the guy who used to own him, or he probably still owns him. But I didn't get a chance to see Corsi when I went to Barbados this year. I was trying to get to see him, but unfortunately it didn't work out. but they were pretty high on him too, as well as perhaps as a stud. So, you're right. A lot of people. I did a video with Corsi for the owner, just to watch him stretch out there in those races that you talked about. Magnificent. It's too bad that the accident happened. You would have had a really nice horse, Glenn.
Yeah. It's funny, it changes things so much because that was the first foal out of the mare, and I know I'm just projecting. Nothing good had to happen, but I believed it would have. If he wins the plate, and all of a sudden I've got a broodmare now on my hands whose first foal is a Queen's Plate winner, and maybe he goes on to bigger and better things, or maybe he's a champion horse. Then it allows me to breed the mare differently. It allows me to, gets me some more money in my jeans, which I'm going to throw back into stud fees and probably trying to buy another mare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, one hazardous event like that really changed the course of the broodmare's career.
Oh wow, man! And Code of Honor baby. So man, what a horse! It's like looking at both of them on screens is like watching. It's like wow. So to echo what we were talking about earlier, the bloodlines really do matter.
For sure they do. And look, when I go to the sale, I can't afford the best of the best, not by any means, but I can afford more than some, and I try to play it at a level that I'm comfortable. And I've had some very good people that have expressed interest in partnering with me. So I've been able to buy maybe a little bit better caliber mare than I would if I was 100% my own money. It allows me to spread my risk a little bit, and maybe own part of two instead of all of one, and that way I've got twice the chances.
I asked this question to someone else. I think it was to Evan from Amplify Stables. But the partnerships, how important are those right now? To the farms and to people in general.
So it's quite amazing. There were always partnerships, and they were almost tax deals when they first got going in the United States. They get several partners in, and there'd be tax benefits too. But now it's even the wealthiest of the wealthy are putting multi-millions of dollars in a pot, and they're getting top bloodstock agents like Donato Lani going out and buying $12-15 million worth of colts in a given year at the Keeneland sale and Keeneland and Saratoga sale, and having these people that are really, really well heeled, multi-millionaires, maybe even billionaires, and they're all putting money into the pot to be partners. And I think the thinking is, why do I want to bid against you? You're just going to cost me more money. But B, if we own this horse together and you own a piece and I own a piece, we can buy, and there's 5 other guys and we all own 20% instead of owning 100% of one horse. Now I've got 5 horses. It's 5 times the action. It's potentially, if one horse bows a tendon or we over evaluated the horse's abilities, we've still got 4 other horses that might get to the racetrack and win us a Grade 1 or win us a Kentucky Derby. So I put together a little partnership, and Evan is part of it for this year coming. It's not at that level, but we've got a Practical Joke, a Connect, and a Liam's Map, and we've got 4 or 5 people now involved, and a couple are new to the industry, and they're just getting their feet wet, see if they like the business, and if they do like the business, then maybe they'll become players, and I think it can help grow the business a great deal.
I think so too. When I speak with some of the older people around the track, they're always telling me about the young blood. Having young blood is important, just like having the young babies, horses. Do you see that happening more, or do you still see the same faces as you go on?
I think of myself as still one of the younger people in the business, and then I go and brush my teeth before bed, and then it's an old guy looking in the mirror at me. So no, we need more young blood. And I'll tell you, it seems to always have been the case. My dad was quite a humorist, and he said the one time, he said, I was up in the turf club. He said, he said it looked like they were filming a remake of the movie Cocoon. So, that's kind of always been the challenge to get younger people, but we absolutely need younger people. The business is not going to survive based on, look, I'm at a stage of my life, and people my age are in a stage of my life where you're probably going to accumulate as much wealth as you've ever done. You're not going to continue going from here. So maybe you spend a little bit more money, or you can make a mistake with a few bucks that you couldn't make when you were 25 or 30 or 35 years old. But no, without young blood, we're cooked. We need young blood.
That's good to hear. I really hope that youngsters out there hear that, and to actually learn from guys like yourself and other people involved, because there's a lot of brilliant horse people out there, and just to becoming a little bit more, get a little bit more understanding, and keep the industry growing. It will be awesome for the future. What's more important to you right now? Is it winning races or a legacy?
I think they go hand in hand. If I would like to win some damn races, we've been working hard, and I always say this: when things are going well, I know I'm not that smart, and when things are not going well, I hope I'm not that silly. So it's been a couple of years since I've had a good horse, and now that I have more partnerships than usual, I'm probably more invested for all of those people than I am for myself. I've been in the winner circle before, but some of these people, it'll be their very first time in the winner circle, and I can't wait to, some of them I'm quite friendly with. I can't wait to get in the winner circle and share that with some newbies. That's going to be an amazing experience, I'm sure.
Glenn, this was a lot of fun talking to you, with a whole lot of wealth of knowledge that you have involved in the industry. You're so important to Ontario horse racing industry. I would probably say Canada. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been awesome talking to you. I'm hoping that I can get to come to see your farm, or come see how you operate sometime in the spring or the summer.
Well, I hope you'll come over the winter or early spring when we have some babies on the ground. Everybody loves seeing them. And to any and all of your viewers, one of the things I do take very seriously is it's all of our job, of the people who are in the industry, is to try to expose the industry to everybody else. And we have a pretty open door policy. All anyone ever needs to do is contact me at, no strings attached, and say, hey, I'd like to come up and see the farm, or I'd like to come and pet a horse. I'd like to come see some babies. And we're more than happy to open our doors, particularly to you, but to any of your viewers as well.
That's pretty cool. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.